There's a new predator in the ocean depths. This beast lurks around Atlantic coral reefs, looking different than any sea creature you might have seen, and has especially effective hunting habits. Its prey? Lionfish, one of the most destructive fish in that neighborhood.
The diver came up screaming. Behind him were 8 Caribbean reef sharks, circling the boat, slamming the hull, coming back for another pass. These were the same sharks his team had spent the better part of 2 years training to hunt lionfish. And now they wouldn't leave the diver alone. Not because they wanted the lionfish, because they wanted the man holding them. The experiment was over. The humans had lost. And off the Florida coast, millions of venomous lionfish were still out there, breeding faster than anyone could kill them. Then, in 2017, the lionfish began dying. Divers pulling up bodies with the flesh sloughing off in strips, gaping circular holes through the flanks. Fish still twitching. 75% of the shallow reef population gone in under a year. No predator, no poison, no human effort. Something else was in the water. And here's the part most people don't know. The lionfish didn't die out. They went somewhere, 300 meters down, into a part of the ocean where our boats can't follow and the thing that killed them can't survive. Whatever they're turning into down there is going to be someone else's problem in about 50 years. This is what biological blowback looks like. And it started with a couple of fish tanks. South Florida, mid-1980s. A hurricane hit some coastal houses. Or a few aquarium owners get tired of feeding their pets. Probably both. What the genetic record can tell you is the number of fish that got loose. Maybe 6, 12 at the high end. By 2017, their descendants had colonized the coastline from Rhode Island down through the Caribbean and into Brazil. Every one of those fish carried 18 venomous spines loaded with a neurotoxin no Atlantic species had ever seen. One sting can paralyze. One female drops 2 million eggs a year, and nothing in the Atlantic knew to eat them. The reefs started dying. So the marine biologists tried something that looked good in a PowerPoint. If nothing would eat a lionfish, they'd teach something. Divers in the Bahamas and off Roatan began hand-feeding speared lionfish to Caribbean reef sharks. On paper, it made sense. Shark skin is covered in dermal denticles, tiny, tooth-like scales harder than bone. Lionfish spines can't get through them. If a shark eats the fish head first, the venomous rays fold flat. It should have worked. What actually happened was the sharks figured out a shortcut. Why chase a venomous fish when a guy in a mask will kill one for you? They stopped hunting on their own almost immediately, started following boats, started waiting for the spear guns. Within a few months, reports came in from Bonaire, Sabah, the Florida Keys. Sharks getting aggressive with divers, tearing catch bags off weight belts, charging into blood clouds the second a spear hit a fish, and in 3 documented cases, going after the diver directly. The program was quietly wound down. No press release. We tried to weaponize the ocean's apex predator. The ocean weaponized it right back, and nobody on that team knew yet that the worst was still coming. Year 2017. Lou Key Reef in the Florida Keys. A survey team came up from a routine dive with something they couldn't explain. Hundreds of lionfish drifting just above the sand, their sides hollowed out, skin peeling off in long, wet ribbons, muscle exposed to salt water and still twitching. They brought a few specimens up to the boat. The smell hit before they'd cleared the dive platform, like a fish market left in July sun. The first theory was predation. Some new fish, maybe. A parasite nobody had cataloged yet. But the wounds were wrong. No bite marks, no drag patterns. The holes were almost perfectly round, like something had eaten the fish from the inside and burst out through the skin. 8 months later, the numbers came in. 75% of shallow reef lionfish across the entire Caribbean basin dead. Surveys from Belize to the Bahamas confirmed it. This wasn't local, it was continental. A marine lab at the University of Florida ran next-generation gene sequencing on the tissue samples. The result sat in a sealed report for a few weeks before anyone talked about it publicly. The cause was a bacterium, a highly specific skin ulcer pathogen that targets one protein in the lionfish body. the one that keeps the skin stuck to the muscle. Once that goes, the whole fish comes apart. While it's still alive, the researchers stopped calling it a disease outbreak. They started calling it ecological asymmetric warfare, because what this bacterium was doing wasn't random. It was selective. Native fish, parrotfish, grouper, snapper, swam through the same water and showed no symptoms, not one lesion. Whatever the bacterium was keyed to, it recognized one specific genetic signature and left everything else alone, and every lionfish in the Atlantic was carrying that signature. The DNA analysis explained why. Every lionfish in the Atlantic, from New York down to Brazil, tens of millions of fish across 2,000 miles of coastline, descends from that same founding group of 6 to 12 aquarium escapees from the 1980s. That's the entire gene pool. This is called a genetic bottleneck. When a population explodes out of a founding group that small, the descendants end up as near identical copies of each other. Cousins breeding with cousins. 40 generations of inbreeding. The gene pool narrows until every individual is running essentially the same immune system against the same threats. Compare that to a healthy species like the Atlantic bluefin tuna. When a new pathogen shows up, it might kill 10 or 15% of the population. The ones that survive carry rare immune variants, and they pass them on. The species comes back stronger. That's the whole point of genetic diversity. It's the insurance policy every wild species runs on. The Atlantic lionfish didn't have one. So when the skin-ulcer bacterium figured out how to defeat the immune system of one lionfish, it had already defeated every lionfish in the Atlantic. At the same time, from North Carolina to Venezuela. And this is the part that still bothers the researchers at NOAA. The pathogen wasn't introduced by humans. It didn't come out of a lab. It didn't come from industrial runoff. It just appeared out of the reef's own microbial population right around the time the invasion hit its peak density. A few of them have started using a phrase their colleagues don't love. They call it the ocean's immune response, the idea being that the reef itself, as an ecosystem, got sick, then ran a fever, and the fever burned the invasion out. But a bacterium this specific, spreading this fast across thousands of miles of open water, doesn't add up on its own. Bacteria can't swim. Currents are too slow. Lionfish don't migrate. There's no natural transmission route that explains a basin-wide die-off in 12 months. So what moved it? The answer was in the shark footage. It had been there the whole time. Go back to those dermal denticles, the armored scales that made sharks immune to lionfish venom, and that the entire training program was built around. Turns out those same scales are effectively antibacterial. Nothing sticks to them. Bacteria can't colonize shark skin, and they can't penetrate it to reach the tissue underneath, which turned the sharks into a nearly perfect pathogen vector. A shark cruising through a reef full of dying lionfish would pick up microscopic traces of the ulcer bacterium on its skin. It wouldn't get sick. It wouldn't even know. But Caribbean reef sharks routinely cover 50 miles in a day. Bull sharks push 200. Tiger sharks cross whole ocean basins. And the sharks the researchers had trained, the ones conditioned to follow divers to congregate wherever lionfish tournaments had concentrated thousands of fish at once, were the ones moving the infection the fastest. They weren't hunting the lionfish anymore. They were ferrying the thing that killed them. So the humans, trying to weaponize a predator, had actually built a distribution network. Every shark that grabbed a speared lionfish, every encounter the program had engineered, was moving the bacterium to the next reef. We didn't stop the invasion. We pushed it over the edge. Now I want to ask you something. Do you think that was an accident? Comment coincidence if you think the bacterium just happened to appear at exactly the right moment. Comment design. If you think this chain of events is too perfect to be random, I'll read everyone. And if you're still watching, hit subscribe. Because the worst part of this case isn't the sharks. It isn't the bacteria. It's what the lionfish did afterward. If you figure the story ended with the reefs recovering and the invasion burned out, you're missing the part nobody in marine biology wants to talk about in public. Deep water survey data from NOAA submersibles working the Florida escarpment has been showing something for the last 2 years, something the researchers weren't expecting and aren't quite sure what to do with. Lionfish, at 300 meters down. Conditions there are brutal. Water just above freezing. Pressure 30 times what you feel at sea level, enough to crush a normal fish's swim bladder in seconds. No sunlight. And critically, the skin-ulcer bacterium, the thing that wiped out the surface population, can't reproduce in cold water. Its metabolism shuts down. The abyssal zone is a sanctuary. For the lionfish, anyway. And what the submersibles have been photographing is strange. These deep-water lionfish don't look the same. Bodies denser, more compact. The bright red and white banding faded almost to a dull rust. Fins shorter, heavier. A structural change consistent with abyssal adaptation, except it's happening inside 1 or 2 generations instead of thousands. Which tells you something. The fish that made it down to 300 meters were already carrying mutations that let them handle the pressure. Rare variants, the kind of genetic diversity the shallow reef population never had. And here's the part the marine biologists don't always put in the press releases. The population we saw on the reefs, the one the bacterium annihilated, may not have been the invasion at all. It may have been the first wave, a disposable surface layer, because the deep water population has everything the shallow one was missing. Isolation from the pathogen, new selection pressure, and, for the first time since the 1980s, a gene pool that isn't running entirely on the same code. The bottleneck is opening, the Achilles heel is healing, and nothing in the marine biology toolkit works at 300 meters. Spear guns are surface weapons. Sharks don't go that deep. You can't train bacteria to chase something they can't infect. We watch the footage, we write the papers, and that's pretty much it. Nature doesn't clean up after us. It never has. What it does is push the problem deeper, into the dark, into the pressure, into parts of the ocean nobody's watching. And somewhere below 300 meters right now, the next generation of Atlantic lionfish is getting bigger, stronger, and less like the fish we used to know how to kill. The war isn't over. We just lost the part of it we were allowed to see. Subscribe to Hidden Latitude. We're not done with this one.